Imagine a time when the high seas were ruled not by nations but by men of daring and ruthlessness. This was a time when the law was as fluid as the ocean waves, and the only authority recognized was the one brandishing the sharpest sword. Welcome to the Golden Age of piracy, a period spanning roughly from 1690 to 1720. This was an era when the world's oceans became a wild, untamed frontier. Imagine the Caribbean Sea, not as the idyllic vacation spot we know today, but as a treacherous battleground where the unwritten rules of the maritime world were constantly being tested and rewritten. The vast expanse of the Atlantic became a chessboard, where cunning and brute force were the keys to survival. At the heart of this age were the pirates, men and women who chose a life of danger and uncertainty over the conformity of society. They were outlaws, rebels, and sometimes heroes, living on the fringe of civilization. They were the terrors of the sea, their names whispered in fear and awe in taverns from Nassau to Port Royal. Among these sea rovers, one name stood out, striking fear into the toughest of sailors, and sending shivers down the spines of even the most hardened sea captains. This man was as mysterious as he was fearsome, his true identity shrouded in myths and legends. He was known by many names, but the one that would echo through the centuries was Blackbeard. Blackbeard was a man of contradictions. He was ruthless, yet charismatic. He was feared, yet respected. His name alone could make a ship surrender without a fight. His flag, depicting a skeleton spearing a heart while toasting the devil, became a symbol of the lawlessness and rebellion that defined this era. In this era of lawlessness and adventure, one man would rise to infamy above all others: Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard. Before he was Blackbeard, he was Edward Teach, a man shrouded in mystery. Our tale begins in the bustling maritime city of Bristol, England, where it's believed Edward Teach was born around the year 1680. Bristol was a hub of commerce and shipping, and it's likely that the young Teach would have been exposed to tales of the sea from an early age. Yet, the early life of Edward Teach remains largely a puzzle. Records of his early years are scarce, and much of what we know is based on conjecture and piecing together fragments of information. Some suggest that Teach may have come from a respectable family, with a decent education, based on his ability to read and write. However, what we do know with some certainty is that the allure of the high seas proved irresistible for Teach. By the early 1800s, he had left England and made his way to the Caribbean, a hotbed of piracy and lawlessness. This was a world far removed from the cobbled streets of Bristol, a world of swashbuckling buccaneers, stolen treasure, and a law unto itself. The Caribbean was a melting pot of cultures and opportunities, a place where a man could reinvent himself. And reinvent himself, Edward Teach did. He threw himself into this world, learning the tricks of the trade from seasoned pirates and gradually carving out a name for himself. But it wasn't just the promise of wealth and adventure that drew Teach to the Caribbean. This was a place where a man could throw off the shackles of society and live by his own rules. For Teach, it was an irresistible lure, a chance to escape the constraints of his past and create a new identity. This ordinary man was about to become an extraordinary legend. From the shadowy corners of Bristol to the sun-drenched islands of the Caribbean, Edward Teach was on the brink of transforming into the fearsome pirate we know today as Blackbeard. Edward Teach didn't become Blackbeard overnight. Our story of transformation begins in the turbulent times of the early 18th century, when Teach was a privateer in Queen Anne's War, also known as the War of Spanish Succession. Privateering was a legal form of piracy, where governments would authorize private citizens to attack and seize the vessels of enemy nations. Teach was one such privateer, operating under the English crown. When the war ended, Teach, like many other privateers, found himself out of work. The seas were his home, and the thrill of the chase was in his blood. He wasn't one to settle for an ordinary life on land, so he turned to the one profession that allowed him to continue his life at sea: piracy. Teach joined the crew of Captain Benjamin Hornigold, a renowned pirate in the Caribbean. Under Hornigold's wing, Teach quickly proved himself to be a formidable pirate, gaining the respect and fear of his comrades. But he wanted more. He wanted to be remembered. He wanted to be feared not just by his crew but by anyone who heard his name. This desire gave birth to Blackbeard. To cultivate an image of terror, Teach grew a thick black beard that covered most of his face. He would twist it into braids and light slow-burning fuses under his hat that would shroud him in a cloud of smoke during battles, making him look like a demon straight from hell. He adopted the name Blackbeard to complete his fearsome persona. His transformation wasn't just about the physical appearance though. Blackbeard was ruthless and brutal when he needed to be. He knew that fear was a more powerful weapon than any sword or cannon. By invoking pure terror, he could control his victims without even needing to fight. With his fearsome appearance and brutal tactics, Blackbeard was born. And so began the reign of one of the most feared pirates in history. Blackbeard's reign of terror on the high seas was marked by audacity and cunning. As the infamy of this notorious pirate grew, so did his audacious exploits, each one more daring than the last. Take for instance the blockade of Charleston, South Carolina. In the spring of 1718, Blackbeard and his fleet of pirates blockaded the port for nearly a week, effectively holding the town hostage. Their demands were simple, yet audacious: a chest of medicine. The town, paralyzed by fear, met the pirates' demands, and Blackbeard, true to his word, lifted the blockade. This audacious act sent ripples of fear across the colonies, as it demonstrated the power and reach of Blackbeard's fleet. But perhaps Blackbeard's most audacious move was the capture of the French ship, La Concorde. In November of 1717, Blackbeard and his crew set their sights on this massive ship. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, Blackbeard's cunning tactics prevailed. He captured the ship and renamed it Queen Anne's Revenge, a name that would become synonymous with terror on the high seas. However, it wasn't just audacity and cunning that made Blackbeard a figure of terror. It was his theatricality. He understood the power of fear and used it to his advantage. With slow match fuses burning in his beard and smoke encircling his head, he became the embodiment of a sea demon, a terrifying sight for any unfortunate sailor that crossed his path. Blackbeard's reign was not one of senseless violence, but rather of calculated fear. He didn't need to kill to get what he wanted. His reputation did that for him. His name alone was enough to make hardened sailors surrender their cargo without a fight. And so, Blackbeard's name became synonymous with fear and dread. His reign was short-lived, but its impact was far-reaching, forever etching his name into the annals of pirate lore. At the helm of the Queen Anne's Revenge, Blackbeard was unstoppable. Let's delve into the heart of Blackbeard's reign, the Queen Anne's Revenge. This wasn't just any ship, it was a floating fortress. Originally a French slave ship, Blackbeard captured it in 1717 and made it his own. Under his command, the ship was retrofitted with 40 cannons, turning it into a formidable force on the high seas. And what's a ship without its crew? The Queen Anne's Revenge was manned by a motley crew of hardened pirates, as ruthless and fearsome as their captain. Among them were skilled navigators, gunners, and deckhands, all loyal to Blackbeard. Their number fluctuated, often reaching as high as 300 men, each one ready to fight and plunder under the black flag. The Queen Anne's Revenge wasn't just known for its firepower and crew, but also for the terror it struck into the hearts of those who saw it. Imagine being a merchant ship in the vast Atlantic, and on the horizon, you see the silhouette of a massive ship, its sails billowing. As it draws closer, you see the skull and crossbones flag fluttering in the wind, and you realize you're in the path of the Queen Anne's Revenge. Blackbeard was a master of psychological warfare. He'd often weave slow-match fuses into his beard and light them during battles, creating a terrifying image of a demon wreathed in smoke and fire. The sight of the Queen Anne's Revenge, coupled with the fiery visage of Blackbeard, was enough to make many a sailor surrender without a fight. But the Queen Anne's Revenge was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of Blackbeard's power, his command over the seas, his ruthlessness. It embodied the very essence of the golden age of piracy: freedom, defiance, and the pursuit of wealth at any cost. The Queen Anne's Revenge wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of Blackbeard's power and ruthlessness. Even the most notorious pirate couldn't outrun the law forever. Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, had been a thorn in the side of the British Empire for many a year. However, the winds of fortune started to turn against him, beginning with his supposed retirement. After a lucrative career of piracy, Blackbeard decided to hang up his cutlass, settling down in Bath, North Carolina. He even managed to secure a royal pardon from Governor Charles Eden, seemingly putting his life of crime behind him. But old habits die hard, and Blackbeard soon found himself back in the familiar world of piracy. His return to the high seas didn't go unnoticed, and it wasn't long before his actions caught the attention of Alexander Spotswood, the governor of Virginia. Spotswood, determined to bring an end to Blackbeard's reign of terror, dispatched Lieutenant Robert Maynard with a simple mission: capture or kill the infamous pirate. Maynard and his crew set sail in November of 1717, hunting for the elusive Blackbeard. The confrontation when it came was as brutal as one might expect. It's said that Blackbeard fought like a demon, his ferocity unmatched. But even the most fearsome pirate is but a man, and Blackbeard eventually fell, succumbing to his wounds. His head was severed and hung from the bowsprit of Maynard's ship, a grisly trophy of their victory and a stern warning to other pirates. In the end, Blackbeard's downfall was as dramatic as his life. His death marked the end of an era, close to the height of the golden age of piracy. Yet, as with many infamous figures from history, death was not the end for Blackbeard. His exploits, his ferocity, and his larger-than-life persona have ensured that his name lives on long after his demise. In death, Blackbeard became a legend that would live on far beyond his years. Blackbeard may be gone, but his legacy is far from forgotten. His name, Edward Teach, might not ring bells, but mention Blackbeard, and a fearsome image of a pirate with a beard as black as night immediately comes to mind. His legend has been passed down through generations, a testament to his enduring influence on our collective consciousness. Blackbeard's legacy is not just a tale of terror and brutality, it's a story of charisma, cunning, and audacity that has resonated through the centuries, shaping the archetype of the pirate in popular culture. His character has been immortalized in countless novels, films, and television shows. Each portrayal adds a new layer to his legend, reimagining him as a ruthless villain, a swashbuckling anti-hero, or a misunderstood outcast. Beyond his influence on pop culture, Blackbeard's life and exploits continue to fascinate historians and archaeologists. His ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, discovered off the coast of North Carolina in the late 20th century, has provided invaluable insights into the golden age of piracy. Artifacts recovered from the wreck, including weapons, personal items, and navigational tools, help us to understand the daily life of a pirate crew and their infamous leader. The ongoing fascination with Blackbeard also extends to the quest for his hidden treasure. Though no significant stash has been found, the hunt continues, fueled by tantalizing tales of buried booty. These treasure hunts, whether literal or metaphorical, are a testament to our enduring fascination with the pirate life and the man who has become its most iconic figure. Blackbeard's legacy, then, is a complex tapestry woven from threads of history, myth, and pop culture. His legend has outlived him by over 3 centuries, and it shows no signs of fading. Blackbeard, the pirate who once ruled the high seas, continues to capture our imagination. The life of Blackbeard was as tumultuous as it was brief. His story, born from the turbulent waves of the golden age of piracy, is a testament to the allure and peril of a life unrestrained by law or morality. We journeyed back to the early life of Edward Teach, a man of humble beginnings who would transform into the fearsome Blackbeard. His transformation was not a sudden leap into infamy, but rather a gradual descent into a world of violence and lawlessness, fueled by the promise of gold, glory, and the intoxicating thrill of absolute freedom. His reign of terror was a time of dread for seafarers. With his imposing figure, fearsome demeanor, and the smoke that billowed around his head like a specter, Blackbeard was a nightmare manifest. His fearsomeness was not born solely of violence, but also from his mastery of theatrics, making him a figure as terrifying in imagination as in reality. His flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was a vessel of dread that mirrored its captain's ruthless determination. A symbol of his power and reach, the ship was the physical embodiment of Blackbeard's reign of terror. But like its captain, the Queen Anne's Revenge met a tragic end, marking the beginning of Blackbeard's downfall. Blackbeard's downfall was as dramatic as his rise. His last stand, a fierce fight against overwhelming odds, ended in his death, but also in the birth of his legend. His death marked the end of his physical existence, but the beginning of his immortal life in history and folklore. Blackbeard's legacy is a reminder of a time when the world's oceans were a wild frontier, where lawlessness ruled and pirates like Blackbeard were kings. He remains one of the most notorious pirates in history, a symbol of the golden age of piracy and the lawless freedom it promised. From Edward Teach to Blackbeard, from man to myth, such was the journey of the pirate who would become a legend. His story serves as a reminder of the allure and danger of a life lived beyond the bounds of society's laws, a life of freedom and of peril.